Hello everyone and welcome to SAT Crunch Time. It's a webinar given by Varsity Tutors today, and we're going to talk about a number of things, how you can approach the SAT as it's coming up very, very quickly. I know probably some of you are parents, some of you are students, you might be 10th, 11th, 12th graders, and we'll cover off on a number of things. It's a pretty high overview of what to expect in terms of, crunchy kind of things with the SAT. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So first off, I want to tell you, I work for Varsity Tutors. My name's Eric Forster, and I want to tell you what Varsity Tutors does. This might be the first time you've come over here. So we do tutoring for SAT and ACT and everything else. So if you're a high school student and you're struggling in calculus or algebra 2 or whatever else, we supply tutoring for that, either in person or online. We have a number of free SAT resources and other sorts of resources, but you're probably mostly interested in SAT resources today. We have books on PDF that you can get from us for free. They're quite good. And we have web resources. If you Google Varsity Tutors free new SAT practice tests, do the new SAT. SAT will come up too, but do new SAT. SAT was revised a few years ago, and we put out a whole bunch of new practice test material for that. The books that we have are all new SAT, the new format for the SAT. And we do free webinars, just like this one. Subscribe to our channel down there, probably right down here somewhere. Subscribe to our channel and you'll get notifications and all kinds of things for all kinds of free content that hopefully you'll find to be pretty helpful. We do these webinars live, but you can also jump in on them later. They're recorded, they live up on YouTube. So again, that's some good stuff for you. That's what Varsity Tutors does. We're an international company. We have tens of thousands of tutors. So it's a very good resource for you, and we've got a lot of material. Getting back to those free SAT resources that we have on the web, overall, we probably have about 200,000 questions in various areas. That's not just SAT. Okay. About me, who is this guy sitting in front of you? A lot of you got an email that probably mentioned me a little bit. My name is Eric Forster. I'm at eric@varsitytutors.com. Feel free to contact me with any questions you have about SAT or really anything else, and I will be happy to answer those. I'm the Director of Learning Tools at Varsity Tutors for the last 6.5 years. I have 15 years of test prep experience. I've taught many students SAT and ACT. I've taught math. I've taught language. I've taught poetry. I've taught Latin. All kinds of things. So back when I was a tutor, I did that quite a lot. Before I was a Director of Learning Tools. As a Director of Learning Tools, it's about building those books, building those web resources, doing these webinars. I'm a Harvard grad. I studied classics, which is about Greek and Roman stuff. I graduated in 2001, summa cum laude, and I was a class marshal. I was 5th in my class at Harvard, so that seems impressive, right? But it was a long time ago, so nothing to worry about there. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Varsity Tutors Test Prep books, including the SAT. And you can get those up on iBooks. You can get them on Amazon for free. Typically, we have PDFs of those books. There are several hundred pages, and we also have free practice tests, like full-length scored practice tests that you can take on any of those as well, on any of those platforms as well, which can be really useful. And we'll talk about that, especially as we're getting into SAT Crunch Time. In the chat today, we have Laura Torp. She's answering questions over in chat today. She's a product specialist working on one-to-many tutoring tools. She used to work for Learning Tools. I used to direct her as the Director of Learning Tools. She's a University of Michigan grad. When she was over here, she was the managing editor of Varsity Tutors Test Prep books, including SAT. And by the way, the managing editor has her hands much deeper in that book than the editor-in-chief does. So she knows those really inside and out. And so I will name her the resident genius at Varsity Tutors. For over 5 years running, she really does a lot and has done a lot. She's a pretty tremendous resource, and those books are amazing, mostly because of her. So she's doing the chat. today and ask her questions. She'll give you answers, and it'll be a nice sidebar running as I'm talking at you with all this information. Okay, what about you? Let's use that chat. Where are you from? First off, let's hear where you're from, guys. Start filling up that chat. I want to know. Don't forget to subscribe also. As you're thinking about where you're from, subscribe to our web channel here. It's going to be really useful. We've got a couple of things up already, and especially on admissions. Our last one 2 weeks ago was on admissions, and this is going to be SAT crunch time. We have some others coming up about your first semester in college, all kinds of things, what to expect. So where are you from? And I'm seeing a couple answers come up. Wow, Texas, California, Florida, Georgia, Boston. I think I see some names I recognize from the last webinar, which I'm happy to see. I appreciate that Boston has an exclamation point. What schools are you guys considering? I'd like to know that. That's always exciting for me. I like to see the spread. It gives me a sense of what kind of scores you guys are aiming for in the SAT. For those of you who were in the last webinar, I was the one doing the chat in that one. So here I am actually in person while Brian was doing the actual webinar. All right, I see some schools coming up in the chat. There's a little delay for me. Georgia Tech, Berkeley, Champaign, Johns Hopkins. I had a student go to Johns Hopkins who I trained a few years ago. UCLA, we got a lot of people. Let's see. Yeah, Brown or Johns Hopkins, California. That's great. And I'm also seeing, so the last one is how many times have you guys taken the SAT? And I'm seeing a lot of people are saying like 0 times. Some of you have taken it 3 times. One of you is actually looking at Princeton, Harvard, and Yale. That's a really good spread. Congratulations. Princeton rejected me. But I went to Harvard, so that's fine. So I always have this sense with Princeton that that's where they're really serious. Stanford too, they also rejected me. So you don't worry about those rejections though. That's the thing. Never worry about who rejected you. It's just a bad fit or, they missed something or whatever. So that's a good thing to know. All right. So I saw somebody's taken the test already 3 times. Some of you have taken it 0 times. So it's okay if you've taken it 0 times. It is even okay if you've taken it 0 times and you're a senior. I know that's going to be a little bit of a freak out, and this is crunch time, but we'll talk about that a bit, about what your strategy can be. If you are a junior, if you're a sophomore and you haven't taken it yet, don't worry, you're way ahead of the game still. If you are a junior and you haven't taken it yet, it's probably time to get on your horse and start moving in that direction. Sophomores should look at the PSAT. That's what you should be taking if you're 10th grader. If you're 11th grader, rising 11th, you're getting in there. Earlier is better. 12th graders, it really is crunch time, right? It's time to get down to business, but it is not time to panic. We'll talk about what you're going to do. All right. So application deadlines. We want to know about this. Because that kind of determines a little bit of what's too late. So you'll see there's a number of deadlines for testing. And some of the deadlines are, application for the test, and then the late application to take or late registration for the test. And, and then the online late registration for the test. As long as you make that last one, it costs a little bit more, but as long as you make that last one, you are in. And then there are dates when they actually release the scores. So early applications are due November 1st to 15th, usually for most schools. And the thing is, one of the tests coming up is November 2nd. So what do? You don't have your SAT score yet. It's not going to come for a couple of weeks, at least. So what you do is you say it's pending. You've taken it. The danger there is you don't know how you scored. You might have a feeling of how you did on the test, but you don't know how you scored. But you can on your application say that SAT is pending. It's not like they're getting through your entire application on day one. It sits there, it goes into a bin, and they look at it when they look at it, basically. So it's okay if your test is pending. Don't be worried about that when you put that early application in. General admissions are typically January to February 1st, depending on the school. And some schools don't have early action or early decision. So look at the schools you're considering, and those are all going to be different. And again, if you're having trouble with that, contact me. Actually, I'll look it up. If you can't figure it out and you're having some trouble, contact me. Let me know that you're having trouble, and I'm more than happy to find the answer for you. November 30th is the University of California system. They do their own special way there. It's a huge system. It's the largest public university system and a very good one in the United States. So they have a lot of folks coming through that system on all different levels, from the Cal State stuff all the way up to Berkeley and UCLA, starting even also at the community colleges. So it's a lot of bureaucracy, so it's November 30th. Financial aid, two of the big ones, FAFSA, that's going to get you your government grants right there. Opens October 1st. 12th graders is due in spring. Get it done as soon as you can. FAFSA has a certain budget. That budget runs out. There might not be anything left. So get in there early. I've never seen it run out, but you never know. CSS, which essentially brings to the college scholarship system, and it looks at a lot of private scholarships. Again, October 1st. It's a kind of clearinghouse. It's due in the spring, but don't wait. It's better to get this stuff out of the way sooner rather than later. And hopefully your FAFSA PIN will be part of your ID for paying your student loans for a long time after. So you'll get to know that pretty well. Let's talk about the next 4 test dates, because it's crunch time. We're talking about crunch time and registration deadlines. So there is one coming up on the 24th. It is August 8th today. It's August 8th. There's one coming up on the 24th. The latest registration deadline, which is you pay a little bit more, you have to do it online. Everything is closed for that particular one except for the online registration. That is due by the 13th. Today is the 8th. That is 5 days from now. It's what, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday? Tuesday, okay? If you have not taken the test and you are a senior currently, you want to register for that test, trust me. We'll talk about why. If you feel like you're not prepared, it doesn't matter. Register for that test. Get in on that test. The next 3 test dates after that are the 5th of December, the 2nd of November, and the 7th of December. All first week of the month, okay? So obviously that 10th of October, or sorry, 5th of October is very useful because you're getting ahead of the early decision deadline. The November one is kind of right in the middle of the early decision deadline, so the danger there, I mean, you want to take it, especially if you haven't taken one or you want to improve your score, but you might not know what your score is before you're saying, yeah, this pending score is coming in. And then if you're doing the December test, you're pretty much not doing early decision, you're doing the standard general admission, okay? So that'll get you in by then. After that, you've got tests in March, May, and June. So pretty much, if you are looking to go to school, if you are a senior and you're looking to go to college next fall, you're going to hit these next 4 tests. Do not panic. Latest registration, I gave the latest registration deadline over there. But if you want to see what the standard registration deadlines are, you can Google SAT late registration deadline or just SAT registration deadline and go up on the College Board and they'll have all the information for you up there. They're the ones who run the actual test. They design it and they run it, all that kind of thing. So let's talk about the test. For those of you who may not have taken it, some of you have taken it. This is going to be, you know all about this. Some of you heard from your friends if you haven't taken it. This is a very high-level overview. I'm not going to dig deeply into the test. That's not what this is about. This is more about getting your ducks in a row and getting in there and doing the test. 3 sections, math, evidence-based reading, and writing. 3 hours total testing time. 3 hours and 50 minutes if you decide on the optional essay. So there's a couple things here that you want to know about that optional essay. If you are going for a really big school, like that person who mentioned that you're going to, you're applying to Yale, Princeton, or Harvard, you might want to consider that SAT optional essay. That's something that's going to set you apart, particularly because it's a 50-minute essay. So it's a 3-hour and 50-minute test then, and it's the critical analysis of a passage. You read the passage, and then you do some critical analysis. That's hard. That is a very college level sort of thing to do. And so if you are a good writer, that can really differentiate you from other people who are trying to get the spot that you're trying to get at the college you're trying to go to, right? At your first choice. To compare that to the ACT is really very much like the SAT. They did a lot in the SAT in the latest revision a few years ago to bring it over to make it more similar to the SAT, and but the essay is quite different. And the essay is basically making and supporting an argument. That's hard, but it is not nearly as hard as reading and then doing a critical analysis of a passage. It's just not. And anyone who's kind of done that sort of thing will tell you that. Any kind of writing instructor, like yours truly, will tell you that. Going back, I think there was a question about CSS before. It is the College Scholarship System, actually, is what that stands for. And it's just a clearinghouse. So if you do CSS scholarship, if you Google that, it's a clearinghouse for private scholarships where you can find stuff up there. And they can be really totally weird scholarships. There are scholarships out there for if you're 6'3" or taller. I've seen them. I knew someone who applied for one once. He was 6'3" or taller. So anyone can fund a scholarship, a private scholarship for any reason. I could if I had a whole lot of money, which I don't, I could have a scholarship for people who wear glasses or who have astigmatism. I can do whatever I want with a private scholarship. So there are some weird ones out there, so they're worth looking into, just in case you're 6'3" and wear glasses or whatever else. So anyway, ACT, SAT, those are very different tasks on the essay. So one of the things you might consider is also taking the ACT. It's also ACT crunch time, but that's not this talk. Otherwise, the tests are very similar. And don't be misled by the fact that the ACT has a science section on it. It does have a dedicated science section. The science questions now in the SAT are basically integrated with everything else, with the evidence-based reading and with the math. There's science content on there that you'll be looking at, and they're actually scoring you on. They're giving you an official score on that part as well. So don't be misled by that. ACT and SAT are generally fairly similar. They're much more similar than they are different, except when it gets to the essay, and that's the big different thing. Now, you might be bummed. You're sitting out there and saying, oh, but I'm taking the SAT and it's got the harder essay. That's not necessarily bad, okay? So if it's got the harder essay, you're pretty confident in your writing skills, again, you can really get to the top of the pack. Things can really spread out there because it's harder. Okay. What if you're not ready? There's a test in 16 days. There's a test in the next few weeks, and you're not even close to ready for that, and you're a senior, and you're feeling like, oh no. So you are, it's in your interest to take that test, because a bad early score, if you get one, will be, overwritten by a later score. Now, if you submit your application, some schools, and check on their policies, some schools will have a later date where you can submit your SAT. So you submit the SAT you have, but they might take a later one. I know that question came up in the chat. That's school to school, but it's not uncommon for them to, allow that. Some of them, a very few of them, will allow you to kind of cherry pick and choose. You scored better on math over here. You scored better on reading over here. Keep in mind, the most selective will typically not do that. The more selective the school, the more they're going to be restrictive on that sort of thing. So just keep that in mind. Look at each individual school's policy. Yes, sort of, you can do that, but not always and not necessarily. But if you're not ready for the SAT and you're a senior and there's a test in 16 days and the close for the registration is in 5 days and you haven't prepared at all, I highly recommend you take it. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, you're going to get a baseline. You're going to get a sense of what's going on. Two, you've got nothing to lose. You literally have nothing to lose. Like, why not go take it? It costs a little bit of money, right? But why not go take it? Because it's good to get in there and see what you're up against. There's nothing like, you can take all the practice tests you want, you can practice, you can do all this. There's nothing like quite like sitting in that room and actually having the timer on and realizing this is real. And the other thing is, no one can teach experience. I can't teach experience. I can teach you a lot of things. I can teach you how to do math. I can teach you how to read Latin, which won't help you on the SAT. Well, it could, but in a really obscure kind of way. But I can't teach you experience. I cannot do it. You can only experience these things yourself. And you never know, maybe you're really good at it. But you'll certainly see your weak points. You certainly will see where you're bad at it. It's very, very unlikely that without having studied for the test that you'll do well. It's not about doing well in August. It's about getting a baseline, getting some experience, getting in there, okay? You can't score if you don't shoot. Wayne Gretzky, I believe, said that. He's the greatest goal scorer in NHL history. So, so there you go. He must have known something about that. All right, strategies and opportunities for you. Experience, first of all. Just building on that. Take the test as often as you can. If you skip test dates at this point, especially if you're a senior, but really even if you're a junior, if you're not getting in there and taking the test, you're missing an opportunity to improve yourself considerably, right? To get more used to it. Everyone's nervous the first time they do anything. The first time I spoke in front of people, the first time I gave a webinar, the first time I taught a class, the first time I've done anything, the first time I played soccer, whatever, you're nervous. That's human to be that way, right? The more you get used to doing something, the better you usually become at it, and you get the nerves out of the way, right? There's a myth with the SAT and the ACT, in fact, and it's this. The myth is that it's easier to take the test. The test in April or May is easier. And that's not true. The students are better who are taking the test, right? You're better at taking it in May because you took it in August, and you took it in November, and you took it in December, and you took it in March. And this is your 5th time taking the test. It's everyone's 5th time. It's not easier. You're better at it. So the tests, they go up and down a little bit. There's a little bit of variation in, is it easier, is it harder? They aren't all exactly equal. It doesn't really matter for your score. You're scored against how everyone else did. Those scores, did you score 1600? Were you in the 99th percentile? Were you in the 95th? Whatever. Those are completely based on how everyone else did on a normalized bell curve. So if it's an easy test, it can actually sometimes be harder to score well because you have to be essentially more perfect. You can miss fewer questions to do really, really well when it's an easier test. So that's another thing. Sometimes your style might be better against a particular population who's taking the test on a given test date. That's who you're competing against, is the person sitting next to you and the person sitting next to that person and every other person in every other room who's taking the test. You're not actually competing against the test itself, if that makes sense. You're competing against everyone else. You're graded on a curve. So a couple questions I want to address really quickly. John asks, if I'm not a good writer, should I still take the essay? It will not hurt your overall score if the essay is not good. It does not affect your overall score at all. If you're not a good writer, there's a couple of things you can do. One thing is to get a writing tutor. We supply tutoring here. It helps. It really, really does. Or get some writing help at your school or whatever else. And there are definitely tricks to this kind of test. Writing a 50-minute essay is way different from doing a term paper or something like this. But the other reason that will help you is that's not just about this particular test. And I cannot tell you this firmly enough. No matter what you're studying, you're pre-med, you're pre-law, you're doing whatever, you're going into biology, you're going into chemistry, you're a math major, you will be sitting in a class, you will be sitting in Western Civilization 101, your first semester, which I have taught at the college level, and you will be sitting there, and it will be the midterm in October in your first year, and you will be given a book And that book is blue. It's called a blue book, and it's lined paper inside, usually like 16 or 32 pages. And what will happen with that blue book is you'll be given some questions about, say, history, say about the Reformation, or about the Spanish Inquisition, or about Michelangelo, if it's, that sort of period, or about Charlemagne, or whatever. And you get to pick one. And then you're going to write an essay live in that class about that person. I've graded many, many thousands of those essays, and I will tell you what, if you just regurgitate a bunch of information about that person, that is not impressive. And what will happen is you wind up in my office with your first C- ever, wondering how that happened. So here's the thing. If you do some writing tutoring and you approach this in the SAT, it will not hurt your SAT score, but it will help you in that first year of college. That first time you sit down for that blue book and you have to write for 50 minutes and do actually exactly what the SAT is asking you for. That's what the SAT is really looking at, right? Sure, it's a hurdle to get you into the school you want. So why are some harder and some, not as hard to get into? Because at that school, they're saying, essentially at Harvard, they're saying, we expect you to be successful because we don't want to kick you out, because we want your money, essentially. Ultimately, it's a business. And so we want you to perform at this level because this is how hard Harvard is. And if you're not performing at this level, we're not interested in you. And it's the same at any school, up and down. This is why some schools are more or less selective, right? It has to do with how difficult their curriculum can be. I'll talk about that a little bit more later, though, so you don't judge yourself too harshly. So, Ansley, I think I answered your question a minute ago, that yes, some schools will allow you to update your SAT score later on, but it just depends on the school. So they might have a separate SAT sort of deadline, a deadline separate from when the application deadline is. Typically, though, the more selective the school, the less likely they are to do that. They've got plenty of people applying. They've got fewer seats and more to fill. So it just depends. But don't be afraid to take that essay, and don't be afraid to get some help on how to approach an essay like that, because you are going to see that in your first year of college. And it is a shocker. It is not, these are straight A students who would come into I'm not trying to scare you, but they are straight A students who they were straight A's in high school, and they got that C- in their History 101 class, and, on that first one. And generally we talked about how to do better. And I had students recover all the way from that and do very, very well. It is a very challenging place to be, right? Okay, so take this test as often as you can. Experience matters. Time management. Time management is extremely important in any kind of test taking. That blue book exam that you get, it is very, very important. It's something that you need to have in college. You need to have in your professional life after college. You need to have now. I'm sure many of you are over-leveraged in your lives. You have too much going on, and which is nice to have you at this. So time management, I would say the number one thing is work on interval training. What does that mean? Again, tutors can help you with this. If you are getting tutoring right now, or if you're planning on getting tutoring, ask them for interval training at a certain point if you're having trouble with time. Here's what that is. You're working on the test. You're taking the test. And you get target fixation, right? You want to be perfect. You want to be great. You want to nail this thing. You're going to score. It's going to be amazing. Yale is going to be so impressed. Princeton, they're all going to love you. And you're going to answer that question that's in front of you no matter what. And suddenly you realize that you've spent 10 minutes on that question. And yes, you answered it correctly. And at the end of that section, you're just guessing on the last 10 or 15 questions or however much time you wasted. What interval training does is it helps you with your pace. It helps you make decisions like, is it time to eliminate some problem answers in this question, take an educated guess, and move on? Because investing the amount of time I can invest in this to solve it is not actually worth the score I'm going to get out of it. One question is just one question. They're not weighted in that regard. Taking the test too often, by the way. A question came up I know some of you are asking, is taking the test too often count against you? Absolutely not. You can select whichever one you want to submit to a school, and that's the one they see. Okay, and again, some of them will even allow you to cherry pick different sections. So it does not. It's more expensive than taking it less often, but you have to pay the fee every time. But it does not count against you. It absolutely does not. They want to see you at your best. Okay, they want to know what you are at your best, on your best day. We all have bad days. Okay, we don't remember, say, I don't know, artists by their 91st best painting. We remember them by their best 3. We don't remember scientists by their experiments that didn't work, right? We remember them if they solved polio, right? Or the hypotenuse of the triangle. We don't remember writers for some terrible article they wrote early in their career when they later on write a tremendous trilogy of books or something like that, right? We want to remember people by what their best day, typically, and colleges are the same way. They're looking at that stuff in terms of what's your best day. So if you bomb out the test one day, they're not looking at that. They're looking at the test that you can decide where to send your tests, and you can send them again, have it overwritten, and all that sort of thing. So don't be afraid to take the test a lot of times. Have your best day, right? Statistically, if you take the test 5 times, you're 5 times as likely to have your best day, right? It's just the way that works, right? One of those days is going to be your worst. One of those days is going to be your best. Don't be afraid of that. You cannot take it too many times. There is a limit, I think. It's 5 or 7 times in a calendar year, where essentially college board won't allow you to take it again. Okay, so that's the only rule limit that you're coming up against. But there's no way you can, within that sort of range, there's no way you can take it too much. You're not going to get in trouble. So interval training will help you. What it is it's essentially you're training for the mile run, and what you're doing is a whole bunch of back-to-back quarter-mile runs at the right pace. So you can see, okay, I'm not running too quickly in the first quarter mile. I'm not hitting the half too quickly, right? That sort of thing. That's what you're doing. You're taking a small sample of questions and you're getting through them of differing levels, and then you're getting through them at a particular pace. And you're knowing then when to invest a little bit more time into something because you can solve it, where to sort of cut ties with something and make an educated guess, 1 out of 2, for example, and when you can move very, very quickly, when you should move very, very quickly. How to eliminate silly errors can help with that when you're moving too quickly, because that's the other thing. Are you moving too quickly, trying to buy too much time? All right, so tutoring really can help with that. A tutor can really see what's going on. You can do that on your own, but it's one of those places the books rarely go, is actual interval training. It's very kind of in the moment. Not to be too punny, but it is. It is really in the moment. Let's talk about test anxiety. You can type in the chat if you suffer or feel that you suffer from test anxiety. Be honest. Just say yes. Yes, I suffer from test anxiety. So I suffer from test anxiety, and I have a bunch of degrees, and one of them's from Harvard. And I once wrote. For one of my grad school degrees, for a master's in anthropology, I wrote a 2-day, 8-hour Blue Book test. So it was 2 4-hour stints in which I was given 2 questions to answer and had to write for 4 hours one day, and the next day had to write for 4 more hours just sitting in a room. And that'll give you some test anxiety when you're facing that, right? A lot of people have it, and I'm not trying to diminish it if you really, really seriously have it, if it's paralyzing. But I want you to know that you aren't the only one who feels test anxiety, and there's a couple of things that you can think about with that. So usually it can be overcome through being and feeling prepared to do your best. Or if you're a senior and I just told you to take the August test, knowing that you're not prepared at all, honestly, sort of YOLO, just go in there, just take it, just do what you can. Sometimes you have to show up and you just take your knocks and you accept it. And if any parents are here who've been to graduate school, they know exactly what I'm talking about, particularly if you've ever been in a humanities seminar or if you've been on a medical rotation, we all take our knocks some days, and you just have to accept that. But you can usually overcome that by through being and feeling prepared for your test. What does being prepared mean? It means you've done things like your time management training. It means you know the content, and you're confident and you can approach it. It means you had a lot of practice. It probably means you've had a tutor supporting you at some point to get you to do your best. And feeling prepared is having that, knowing that you're going to be okay, and it's part of that experience kind of thing. You've done this before, nobody died, nobody's lives, careers, anything like that were ended, and you survived. You walked out of that room with some kind of score. Also recognizing, and this gets back to some of that time management, that perfection is the enemy of the good. That it is not necessary for you to succeed in life to be perfect. It can really, really wreck you in terms of your self-esteem, in terms of what you can get done. And again, that can help. Tutors can help with that. Taking the test a lot can help with that. Recognizing that this isn't something that that's going to ruin you, essentially, and something that you have to be perfect at. So I'm going to tell a couple of stories here about that might help you with test anxiety, and it's about not panicking. And I can't remember if it's on my next slide or not. We'll see. We'll refer back to them. So the first one is, and this is a movie that's well above or before your time. And so somebody's asking, actually, is super scoring okay? And I think what you mean by that is, I got the math score over here one time, and I got the writing score over here this other time. Depends on the college if they'll accept that. So that's, if that's what you're asking, that can be okay. They will sometimes do that, but sometimes they won't. It's a student-to-student basis sometimes, and it's a school-to-school basis. So, okay, let's talk about panic. You're ready for the test. You're coming in there, and what's going to happen? So this movie is before your time, but you should watch it because it's really good. There's been a lot of documentaries about it. We're going to talk about Apollo 13. The parents in the room will remember Apollo 13, even if they weren't there. I'm 50, and I wouldn't be old enough to remember it. So I'm certainly as old as many parents in the room, or older. So Apollo 13, they're going to the moon. And what happens? Well, anybody who's seen the Apollo 13 movie, which was probably 1996, which is the olden days to many of you kids now, well before your time, but if you get a chance to see it, see it. It's pretty well done as far as those things go. 3 guys are on a spaceship. They're going to the moon. The oxygen mixer tank blows out a side of the spacecraft. And, true story, they're not going to land on the moon. In fact, they might not make it back to Earth. It's terrifying, right? They're out there in space. There's no one to help them except for the guys on the ground at ground control in Houston, right? Houston, we have a problem. And so someone will ask the captain of that ship once, and it's not. I don't think it's in the movie, but I saw an interview with him where they said, "Why didn't you panic? Why? What? How did you prevent yourself from panicking? It seems like you're hundreds of thousands of miles from Earth. You have to sling around the moon to get back. Your computers are down. Nothing's working. It's freezing cold in there. One of the guys is sick. It's terrifying. It's an absolutely terrifying situation." And Lovell said, "Well, actually, I thought about panicking. Because he's a human being. He thought about panicking, and he said, but I decided not to because I decided that." If I panicked, it'd just be 15 minutes. I'd have 15 minutes less oxygen, and I'd be in exactly the same place I was before. Now, he's obviously an exceptional human being, right? I mean, he's the captain of a spacecraft that's flying to the moon. I don't expect everyone to be able to be like, "Oh, oops, our spaceship just blew up. How are we going to make it back? I guess I'll decide not to panic because that'll use up my oxygen or whatever." But it's a little story I want to give you so that when you're sitting down for that test, to recognize that, well, you might not be the captain of a spaceship that's in the process of blowing up. He's a human being and you're a human being too, right? you have that in common with this person. And if somebody can deal with that, somewhere in you, you have the capacity to deal with a tremendous amount of anxiety, right? And that that you can decide, hey, you know, I'm just going to tackle this test. I'm not going to worry about anything except this test. And so one of the things that you can do to get ahead of that test anxiety, don't worry about the score. You have no control over the score. The score is based on what everybody else is doing. You have no control over that, which of course is an anxiety-inducing situation when you don't have control. I understand that. But you do have control over something, and that's answering the question that's in front of you and using the training that you have to get to where you need to be. I'll have another panic story later. All right, where are you? 10th grade. If you're in 10th grade, start preparing for and taking the PSAT. It's going to give you a good baseline, figure out where you are, figure out what you need to work on, get ahead of the game. You're way ahead of SAT crunch time, but still, this is a good place for you to start pushing. 11th grade, start preparing for and really start taking the SAT. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. You know, you're going to be better next year. Don't be afraid to do it now. Now is the time to really start seeing where you are. Don't let the test judge you. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but it is not an intelligence test. It is not something that tells you where you're going to end up in life. It really, really isn't. I promise you that. I went to Harvard and did all that stuff. I was 27 when I was a freshman, guys. I was not anywhere close when I got out of high school to going to any sort of college anywhere. And that's a different story that I'm not going to tell you. But I was a 27-year-old freshman at Harvard, and I scored obviously very well on these tests. And I had a lot of life experience, which really helped me do that, right? Had certain advantages there. But I want you to know that, you know, how you score on the SAT when you're 16, 17, 18 years old does not tell me anything about who you're going to be in life. And I mean that. I really, really do. But start taking it as an 11th grader because it will really help you get into that school you want to get into, have that experience you want to have. 12th grade. You might be behind if you haven't taken it yet, but all is not lost, and we talked about that a little bit. You probably do want to do some tutoring if you can. You certainly want to hit this thing full force. This is your number one priority. Obviously, you've got to do school. You've got to get good grades. You've got to do all that. But accelerate your program, hard studying, tutoring. You know, you should be thinking about SAT and doing things to get yourself better at it every single day. Looking at SAT books, taking SAT practice tests, using some of our free online resources. Get a tutor, even if it's for a couple of hours. Get something moving on that and start taking the test. Even if you can't get that going before August 24th, get there. Stay positive if you're in this situation. Don't panic, okay? You can get 4 tests in and massively improve on each one. You can get 4 tests in before the general applications are due. You can get August, October, November, and December in. You're going to get better just taking those tests. And if you're working in between there, working hard, really pushing, you can make it happen. It might be hard. It might be not the most fun thing you've ever done in your life, but it's just a couple of months. It really is. And the way I approach those kinds of things is, you know what? I can do just about anything for a couple of months. I can get through almost anything for a couple of months, and it's a good place for you to be. Think about how tough that makes you, going into college, because you will have hurdles in the future. You'll have hurdles in your professional life. You'll have hurdles in college or graduate school. And when you look back and you're like, well, but there was that one time I really pushed hard for 4 months, and look at what I was able to do. You'll improve. You'll get better. So anyway, admissions, the SAT puzzle, admissions. SAT is only one part of the puzzle. It's an important part of the puzzle, but you got a whole lot of other stuff going on. Class rank, grades, extracurriculars, any writing they might have you do, if your parents went to that school, if your uncle bought a building, seriously, there's all kinds of things, some of which are deeply unfair, some of which are very fair, and it's just one piece of the puzzle. Schools are looking for a good fit. You could score a perfect SAT, and schools will reject you because you're not exactly the person they want. You could be from the wrong place, for example. I'll give you an example. I don't think any of you are from St. Louis, but St. Louis has a school called Washington University, and it's a private school. It's a pretty big private school, and lately, the last 20 years or so, it's typically ranking in the top 15 or 20 nationwide for undergrads. They are very much looking, they do take people from St. Louis. The CEO of Varsity Tutors, in fact, is from St. Louis, and he went to Washington University. But they very much are looking for a demographic that gives them a lot of people from all over the country, not just a local demographic. And that means that if you are from around there, you actually have to be better than somebody who's from Boston or who's from San Francisco or whatever, because they want a cross-cut. They want this kind of cross-cut of the entire country. They want a national kind of reputation, and one way to do that is get people from all over the place. So it's really impressive that my CEO actually went there and was from there, because he had to go even the extra mile above that. That seems unfair, but they're a private school. They can decide who they want in and who they don't, and how many people they want from a particular location. So if you've got a really good school and you live where that really good school is, and that really good school is trying to really up their reputation everywhere, make sure you're applying to other really good schools elsewhere, because surprisingly, you might get rejected by the one and accepted by, Princeton or Yale or Stanford, even though you thought, well, surely those are harder than Washington University and St. Louis. They're not necessarily. So it's only one piece of the puzzle, and there's a lot of pieces to this very complicated puzzle. Okay, what about the ACT? Consider taking it as well. You might be better at it. The tests are very similar, but there are some minor differences just in how they look, how they are presented. Their content is basically the same. But consider taking the SAT or the ACT as well. Also, you can get more test time in. You can get more time in there, right? So you get more practice. You get the nerves out of the way. You get used to, hey, the test works this way. I'm used to this. This is becoming easier. And sometimes those differences can put something into contrast where you can kind of see how it's constructed. Suddenly the SAT doesn't become this big mythological kind of, edifice that's staring you in the face. It's just one choice among a couple, right? It's one way of doing things. And there are plenty of people who do better on one than the other. And there's a kind of interaction between the two that can be very, very useful. I'm panicked that I won't get the score I need. Well, work hard. And don't put yourself in a box for regarding the score you get. It is not absolutely determinative of your life. You are at the beginning, and the end has not been written here, and that's very important. So I taught for a while. One of the schools I taught at was a little tiny liberal arts school in western Pennsylvania. Local draw, basically along the I-79 corridor, and so kids were almost all within, 50, 60 miles of that place. They weren't highly selective, nothing. So you would expect that, they typically didn't have like the absolute top flight SAT scores, anything. A few people did, but for the most part. And yet, we had people graduate 4 years later who went on to places like Stanford and the University of Chicago and Yale for graduate school, by the way. So they came from a kind of third-rate liberal arts college that wasn't highly selective. They didn't have huge SAT scores. They didn't have a massive portfolio to show. They went to a little school, and the best of them went on to some of the absolute best schools in the country for graduate school. That's really impressive, and that can be you. And that's what I mean by don't let this determine what your life is, right? This isn't the end. So when I say work hard, one of the things I also mean, and I have a little story for that. I have a friend who's a passenger jet pilot. I've known him since he was younger than you guys are now. And he's in his 40s now. And I think 42, probably. He's a captain. He flies the Airbus 320 series. And he's got a lot of funny stories. And one of them that he has, he's never failed a check ride either, which is a very impressive thing. Almost every pilot ever has failed a check ride, and he's never failed one. He's an amazing person. And he's in a simulator one day, because they do a lot of simulator stuff. And he's sitting on a runway in the simulator with his first officer. And there's a flight instructor behind him. And the flight instructor actually makes a mistake, hits a button. And so they were sitting there going 0 knots at the beginning of the runway. And now they're 500 feet in the air going 0 knots. So that's not good, to be teleported 500 feet in the air going nowhere. And he says he just looked over as this kind of cartoonish moment where they kind of looked over at each other, he and the first officer, getting ready for the simulator, of course, to plunge them out of the sky horrifyingly, right? Just going to plunge, which is kind of sickening, and it's really unpleasant. They just can't stand doing that. And when that happened, he threw his arms up, just out of frustration that they'd suddenly been teleported up there. And incredibly, this was actually a teachable moment for, even though it was an error by the flight instructor. Afterward, the flight instructor said, never do that. Never, ever, ever take your hands off the controls, no matter what's happening. Fly the plane until it hits the ground. If it doesn't have wings, keep flying the plane. If it doesn't have engines, keep flying the plane. Always fly the plane. Fly the plane. You show up, no matter what happens. You got a bad morning, you got bit by your dog, things went horribly throughout your whole morning. Fly the plane. Do what's in front of you and do it to your absolute best. Don't take your hands off the controls, even if you're suddenly 500 feet in the air going 0 knots, because that plane won't fly when that's happening, right? No matter what you do, the plane's going to fall out of the sky. It doesn't matter. You fly that plane until it hits the ground, okay? No matter what. Don't second guess yourself in the middle of the test. Don't think about, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm doing well enough to get into Stanford or the University of Missouri or the University of Georgia or Yale or whatever. Don't worry about it. It's not in your control. What's in control is you have your hands on the control and you're going to fly that plane. It might crash, might fall out of the sky. A lot of things might happen, or you might save it. So never, ever, ever give up. Seriously, it's just never do it. You never know how you're going to do. You're not the test grader. You're the test taker. Don't grade the test while you're taking it. That will get you in trouble. Okay, test day. Get rest the whole week leading up to the test. The whole week, okay? If the test is on a Tuesday, usually they're not. But, don't think about the date you have on Saturday. Don't go out and party. If you're taking the test and you're on that band trip, it's probably not going to be your best test ever. Do the things that you're normally doing that week. Focus on the test, though. You have to be focused on the test, okay? Get a lot of sleep. Get extra rest. Do not stay up late browsing the web. Do not stay up late binging Netflix. Get your rest. You might be stressed. You might need to distract yourself. Don't do it at midnight, okay? Routine. Do everything you usually do. Take the medications, the vitamins, whatever you do that day. Take your shower. Whatever you do in the morning, do it just like always. Leave a little bit early for the test because you don't want to stress about traffic. Right? You don't want to be white knuckling it in there going, oh no, that puts you in the wrong kind of headspace. Get somebody else to drive you. Do something where it's not you with your hands on the wheel. Let yourself get into kind of the place you need to be mentally so that you're not thinking about other things, because that'll lower your score. Stay in that routine. Make sure you eat. Make sure your brain has the energy it needs, and not just sugar. The brain loves sugar. But if you just eat sugar, a little bit into that 3-hour test, you're going to crash and be shaky and wonder what's happened, and you don't have time to eat, and you're in trouble. Get yourself, some kind of decent meal. Not Red Bull, guys, not energy drinks, not that kind of thing. Don't load the caffeine because it messes with your blood sugar. It'll mess with your brain. You will not perform at your best. Get some protein, get some carbs. Act like you're running a marathon. Your brain uses a lot of calories. It is an absolute engine up there. It burns calories like you wouldn't believe. Like if you're thinking hard on something, like twice as much as like walking for an hour is your brain for an hour. It's like 200 calories an hour. It will burn them up. Get yourself some protein. Get yourself some stuff that lasts a long time, right? So you're ready to go. I know it's hard. And that's why I mention it, because you might be nervous. You might feel like puking, like I did before this webinar. But once it gets going, you kind of get in the groove and you go. Keep your routine the way it is. Don't change it up, All right. So you've got help. If you need more admissions insight, our tutoring packages come with that. If you want more free advice, subscribe to this channel. We're giving it away. We want you to know us. We want to be, a resource for you. We're excited about that. That's my job for 6.5 years at this company, is giving stuff away for free. I love it. I love my job. I love being able to do that. 200,000 questions that we have up online, we give them away for free. A whole bunch of test prep books, we give them away for free. Okay, so, we don't give our tutoring away for free. We charge for that. And that's part of it. Part of it is you're not always going to learn everything from a book. You're not always going to learn everything from a webinar. You're not always going to learn everything from just taking practice questions. You can get a long way with that stuff, and sometimes a tutor is all you need to push you over a line. So take a look at us. Go up to our website, varsitytutors.com, and see what kind of packages we can put together for you. Do I want you to do that? Of course I do. It's what we do at this company, but we have our own platform, and you can be online, or we'll tutor you anywhere in the world on literally any subject. So even if it's not SAT that you're struggling with, or you need a little bit of a kick or help, it can get you a long way. And remember, SAT is just one part of your admissions package. It doesn't define your life. I know it's important. I know it's a big deal, but and it should be. It should matter. But whatever you get, move on from there and keep going. Don't be the person who talks about, you got a perfect score on it forever. It matters what you do, right? When you're in school, it matters what you do with your career when you get out of school. It matters that you keep growing in this stuff. That's how you do things. That's how you change the world. That's how you make things happen. It's not because you're SAT. It's a start. It's the beginning. When I was graduating from Harvard College, I remember the president of the university was standing up there, and he was congratulating various groups, the medical school, the School of Education, Masters of Education, all of this kind of stuff. All these different people were getting, all these PhDs, all of that. And he said to the undergraduates at Harvard College, he said, "Congratulations on joining the ranks of the educated." The ranks of the educated. Congratulations on doing kind of minimum to get you anywhere. You haven't done anything, was basically what he was saying to all of us. And, now that I'm 50 and it's way down the road, I think that's true. It was a big accomplishment at the time. And we should always celebrate those accomplishments, but we should recognize them in a particular context and always move forward. The SAT is something you're going to move forward from. The school you go to is something you're going to move forward to and continue to move forward. So do not judge yourself, no matter what score you get. Do your best. Do your best. Be you and do your best and get into the school that's best for you, okay? I really feel like I have to tell you guys that because I know that perfectionism can be tough. Remember, we have practice tests. We have 2 different kinds also that we give away. So you can get, we have PDF practice tests, or you can get them up on Amazon. Just look, Varsity Tutors SAT practice test. iBooks, you can find them there. Those are full-length practice tests that we built. You can also get new SAT practice material. Google new SAT Varsity Tutors practice, and you'll get it. You'll probably get SAT and you'll get new SAT. Click on the new SAT link. And those will just be kind of discrete questions in different subject areas. They're not meant, they're called diagnostics. They're not actually meant to look like the test. They're just looking at your skill set a little bit. If you find one that's wrong, let me know and I'll fix it. We've got 200,000, so there can be things that are wrong in there. That happens. You put all these things out there. We've got a reporting system, so please let me know. And but most of them are really, really pretty good. Some of them are very, very good. So go into those diagnostics. Again, Google new SAT practice tests, Varsity Tutors, and then click on the link that gives you new SAT rather than SAT. And you'll be able to find some of those. And you can, again, on Amazon or iBooks, you can find our full-length practice tests. I think we have 1 or 2 up on those platforms. Varsity Tutors SAT practice test should get you there. If you have any problem accessing that, email me, eric@varsitytutors.com, and we'll get you hooked up. We can even send you a PDF, whatever, that will help you out, and it's free, and it's good. So it's better than a lot of books that you can get out there that actually cost $20, $30. Use those books too, compare ours, see what you think. I'm not afraid of that. So anyway, all right, Like us, please. Like our YouTube channel. Please subscribe. And thank you very much for coming to this. And I'm going to sign off. Email me any follow-up questions you have. And we really do appreciate you, especially liking and subscribing. There will be a post. We'll send out a little survey. Please, just give us some info. It's really basic stuff. We're not trying to seek your information. We just want to know how to do these well and how to do them better, and what sorts of people are showing up for our YouTube channel. All right, thank you.